Every burial site we've found with a human and an animal laid together gets described the same way. A bond, a companionship. Proof that the relationship moved in both directions. That word, bond, is carrying more weight than the evidence can hold. What we've actually found is proof of intention. One person decided to dig a grave, place a body, lay an animal beside it, and seal it shut. That's data. What was happening on the other side inside the animal in the moment that mattered most, we don't have, and the longer you look at what we've actually dug up, the less it looks like a love story, and the more it looks like a question we've been answering for them. Archaeology is very good at recording decisions. It's built for that. A grave is a sequence of choices: where to dig, how deep, what to place inside, how to arrange the limbs, what objects to leave behind. Every one of those choices survives in the dirt for thousands of years. Intention leaves a footprint. Reciprocity does not. There is no artifact for what an animal understood. No layer of sediment that preserves whether a dog felt anything resembling loyalty or whether a buried wildcat experienced anything we'd recognize as trust. We dig up the human side of the story almost perfectly preserved, and we've spent a century filling in the other half using our own emotional vocabulary, because that's the only vocabulary we have. So when we say bond, what we're actually pointing at is a one-sided record being read as a two-sided relationship. The first burial that makes this obvious is also the most famous one. 12,000 years ago, in what is now northern Israel, at a site called Ain Mallaha, archaeologists found a woman buried on her side. Her hand rests on the body of a puppy, 3 to 5 months old, curled against her chest. The image has been reproduced in textbooks for decades as the founding moment of the human-dog relationship. It's treated almost like a wedding photo for an entire species. Here's what the burial actually proves. A community took the time, in a hunter-gatherer economy where every hour mattered, to bury a small dog with the same care given to a person. That's a real, measurable act of value. They didn't have to do that. The choice to bury this particular animal this particular way tells us the humans had assigned it meaning. What it doesn't tell us is whether the puppy understood any of it. 3 to 5 months old is barely past infancy for a dog. It's not old enough to have formed the kind of relationship the gesture implies it had. Less than 200 kilometers away, at a site called Hilazon Tachtit, archaeologists found something that complicates the story further. A grave built for an elderly, disabled woman, surrounded by exceptional offerings: 50 tortoise shells, body parts from a wild boar, an eagle, a cow, a leopard, 2 martens, and a complete human foot that wasn't hers. Researchers believe this is one of the earliest known shaman burials in the archaeological record. This wasn't a pet. Nobody is claiming this woman had a relationship with a leopard. The animal parts here were almost certainly symbolic, a ritual, representing power or status rather than companionship. And that's the complication. The same culture, in the same region, within the same general period, was burying animals for 2 completely different reasons. Sometimes the gesture looks like love, sometimes it looks like ceremony. From the bones alone, we often can't tell which one we're looking at. Move forward about 3,000 years, to the island of Cyprus, to a Neolithic village called Shillourokambos. Cats are not native to this island. Somebody had to put a cat on a boat. That alone tells you something. This wasn't an animal that wandered in and got tolerated. A human made a deliberate choice to carry it across open water. In a grave dated to roughly 9,500 years ago, archaeologists found an 8-month-old wildcat buried just 40 centimeters from a human body, surrounded by polished stone tools and 24 seashells. The human grave was unusually rich for the period, suggesting the person buried there held some kind of status. The cat's placement, this close, this careful, predates the earliest Egyptian evidence of cat reverence by more than 4,000 years. Once again, the human side of this is legible. Somebody transported an animal across the sea, fed it, kept it close enough in life that it made sense to keep it close in death. That's the human record, and it's unambiguous. The cat's side is the part we can't reach. An 8-month-old wildcat hasn't been selectively bred for generations the way a modern house cat has. Genetically, it's barely distinguishable from a wild animal that bites the hand that feeds it on a normal Tuesday. We don't know if it stayed near that person because it had formed something resembling attachment, or because that person was, functionally, the most reliable food source it had ever encountered. Both explanations fit the same 40 centimeters of dirt. Everything so far has come from bones. Bones can't be interviewed, but there's one relationship in this category we don't have to reconstruct from a grave because it never fully ended, and that makes it the closest thing we have to a live experiment. In Australia, Aboriginal communities have lived alongside dingoes for thousands of years. The historical record is specific. Pups were taken from wild dens and raised inside camps, fed, slept beside, and, in many documented cases, given the same burial rites as humans when they died. Researchers examining dingo remains at sites like Curracurrang, south of Sydney, found burial methods nearly identical to the human graves found at the same locations. So far, this sounds like the clearest case yet of a two-sided relationship. Here's the part that breaks it open. Despite generations of this exact pattern, raised by humans, fed by humans, sleeping in human camps, dingoes never became domesticated in the biological sense. No floppy ears, no shortened snout. None of the physical markers that show up in every other animal humans have actually bred for tameness, and historical accounts describe something even stranger. When camp dingoes reached sexual maturity, a large number of them simply left. They went back into the bush, bred in the wild, and in some documented cases never returned. An animal that was fed, sheltered, and given funeral rites, walking away the moment its biology told it to. If there was ever a bond strong enough to outlast that pull, this should be the case where we'd see it most clearly. And for some individual dingoes, by certain accounts, we do. Some are described returning to the same camp, the same person, across years. But that pattern was never universal, and nobody has ever been able to predict in advance which animal would stay and which one would simply vanish into the tree line and not come back. The same species raised the same way produced two opposite outcomes, and we still don't have a way to tell, looking at a pup in someone's arms, which future it's walking toward. There's a quieter version of this same problem painted on stone. Across cave sites in Europe, some researchers have proposed that the same individual animals appear to be depicted more than once, in different panels, generations apart, with matching unique markings. If that reading holds, it would mean the recognition went deeper than we assumed, that ancient humans were tracking specific animals as individuals, not just as a category of prey. It would also still only prove what one side was doing. The animal in the painting was never given a vote on how it would be remembered. So here's where this actually leaves us. A woman in Israel rested her hand on a puppy 12,000 years ago, and we have no way to ask the puppy what that touch meant to it. A community on Cyprus carried a wildcat across open water and buried it within arm's reach of one of their own. And the cat never got to explain why it stayed close. Generations of dingoes were raised inside human camps, given human burial rites, and some walked back into the wild the moment biology called them, while others, for reasons we still can't predict, didn't. What we keep finding is overwhelming evidence of human intention. Care, ritual, deliberate choice, repeated across 10,000 years and 3 continents. What we're not finding, and may never find, is the other half of the conversation. Not because it didn't happen, because the only species that left a written, buried, painted record of how it felt was ours. It's possible every one of these animals understood exactly what was being offered to it, and reciprocated something real. It's also possible we've spent 10,000 years performing a relationship in one direction and calling the silence on the other side agreement. The bones don't resolve it. The graves don't resolve it. The dingoes that came back and the ones that didn't don't resolve it either. We keep calling it a bond. What we can actually prove is that we showed up. Whether anything showed up back is a question we buried right along with them.